You are in the right spot. So I'm going to say that I'm calling the meeting to order, and then I'm going to pass you this, and you're going to hang it, and then you're going to pass it to your next friend. And then, all right, you ready? Okay. I would like to call to order the November 15th regular meeting for the Chagrin Falls Board of Education. Nicely done. Thank you. And now you guys can go sit back down because we have a few things to do before we get to our student showcase. Mrs. Bruno, please take the roll.
Mrs. Bros.
Here.
Mrs. Bendel. Here. Mrs. Garvey.
Here.
Mrs. Miller.
Here.
Dr. Schlepper.
Here.
If you would all please join me to stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's very nice having our student voices say the Pledge of Allegiance alongside us. I move to approve the minutes from October 4th, October 18th, again on October 4th and October 11th. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Any edits, comments, questions? No. Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Bros.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
At this point, I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Schlepper and Dr. Jones to introduce our student showcase.
I'm actually going to pass the baton to Dr. Jones pretty quickly. This is her baby. It sounds like a program that's been within the district or within the building for over a decade, the Gurney Buddy classes. So Dr. Jones is trying to find you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm here to introduce our buddy class program. So with us tonight, we have representatives from a pairing of buddy classes, 1st and 3rd grade. So the buddy class program was born out of the Hall of Fame application, actually. The first time we went through the Hall of Fame application, in between the first and second time, one of the things we found the first time around was in the section where the schools evaluated on student development and leadership opportunities, we were a little short. It's hard to come up with leadership opportunities in a preschool through 3rd grade building. So after a lot of brainstorming, we came up with this idea of buddy classes where every kindergarten and 2nd grade class is paired up as buddies and every 1st and 3rd grade class paired up as buddies. And with your buddy class, you meet periodically and do activities together. And it really grew from there. And they'll be telling you tonight about a lot of the activities that we do traditionally with buddy classes. But what we found, even in the first year, was it was amazing to see some of our 2nd and 3rd graders in these leadership roles. I mean, for the first time ever, they felt like they were responsible for younger students and teaching them something or helping them with an activity. And we found that our kindergarten and 1st graders, it was amazing to them that not only do they have a teacher in their class, but now they have a whole other classroom full of students that they know, another classroom teacher that they know. They see the 2nd and 3rd graders on the bus, and that's my buddy class person. And it was amazing, the connections and the sense of belonging that it created in the building. And what's really been amazing to me is a year never goes by where I don't hear this from somebody when class lists come out, right? Oh, he has so-and-so's old buddy class teacher, or his brother, or you have his brother's old buddy class teacher, or he has his buddy class teacher from when he was in kindergarten. So the connections just grow every year. It's really been amazing to create that sense of community in our school. So I'm going to let them tell you the details. I'm going to turn it over to our 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Malley, and our 3rd grade teacher, Ms. Tadaro here, our buddy class teachers.
Okay, so hi, I'm Stephanie Malley. I'm the 1st grade teacher of this partnership. And this is my buddy class teacher. And we're going to start with having the kids introduce themselves and walk you through their slideshow. And then if you have any questions, you'll let us know. Okay.
My name is Noah Carvelli, and I really like having buddy class because we get to be with other people you wouldn't know if you didn't have buddy class. My name is Luke Fuller. I like having buddy class because we play fun games, like just like me, and our buddies can teach us about third grade. Hi, I'm Winnie Fuller, and the reason that I like buddy class is because when you're older, you get to be someone's idol, and as a buddy, we get to be their idol, and they look up to us. Hi, my name is Paul Bachman, and I like buddy class because I get to make more friends. I'm Al De Leon, and the reason that I like buddy classes is it's fun to see people that are younger than us and how they learn, and I like making friends with new people. Hi, I'm Maddie Hoinaki, and I like buddy class because we do fun things like swimming, and my buddy's also on my soccer team. Why do we have buddy classes? Through working with our buddies, we get to connect with new people, show leadership, responsibility, and we get to have fun. We can also learn from each other. It's more than just games and fun stuff. We need to show them we are responsible, safe, and respectful. Then they will be that way too. We get together once a month to do fun projects or read with each other or help each other with our writing. First and third graders go swimming at Wembley, where we take a swimming lesson and then have some free time in the pool to play with friends. Last year, as a kindergartner, I went ice skating with my buddy class. We took a lesson and got to skate around. Buddy class helps us to be leaders. We get to be helpful, kind, and we help them know how things work and be less confused about our school. We like to help them be better students. We got to learn about each other. I made a pumpkin with my buddy Owen, and we got to chat about how we are the same and different. We also did a brown bag sharing activity where we brought in an item that represents us. We shared about it with our classmates and our buddy so that they could learn more about us and make connections. We can help each other. We get together to read and share our writing. It is fun too. Listen to third grade stories and get ideas for our writing too. Our third grade buddies help us become better writers, readers, and friends. I can't wait to be a buddy in second, third grade too. Having buddies in different grades help us to feel more a part of our Gurney school community and enjoy being the oldest in the building. It is fun to remember all the things we've done as students at Gurney as we prepare to move into the intermediate school.
So some of you are in third grade, so you've had a few buddy classes at this point, right? Well, can you tell me a little bit about what might be different with your buddy class this year than some of the ones you've had in the past?
Last year we've done a lot of different activities that involve like reading and ice skating, and this year we've done like swimming, and we've had stories, and we've read our stories and helped our buddies like with spelling and maybe adding things to their stories.
That's cool.
And last year we did a lot of switching around with partners. This year we get to stay with one partner, learn more about them, and find out things that they are into.
Which one do you like better?
I like this year better.
You do. Does anyone else have any questions? So, I know you're in Gurnee and that's the youngest building that we have in the school district, but you should also know that you're leaders for our whole school district because Dr. Jones can share, this has become a model for some work that we're doing connecting across the district this year. Some of the administrators from the theme team worked hard to create a buddy situation from each and every building so that everyone in the Chagrin Falls School District now has some sort of buddy experience. And they're doing it because they've seen how successful it's been and the work that you've done. So you should feel really proud that you put something in place, that you've been doing something that now even our high schoolers are doing, which I think is pretty cool. Any other questions or comments? No? All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming and sharing that with us tonight. It was really nice to see your faces and to learn more about what you're doing. And it was nice to have your voices doing the Pledge of Allegiance with us too. It gets kind of quiet sometimes here. But I'm going to give just a couple minutes break so that if you want to, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. We have a 5-year forecast where we'll be talking about the budget for the next 5 years, which might be really interesting to your parents, but maybe not as interesting to you at this point. But we'll let you get a chance to go home and do homework and spend some time with your family if you want. Thank you for coming.
Great job. I think it's very exciting, Sharon. I think you're going to be doing cartwheels. The best part of the day.
They can always watch it on the video if they wake up tomorrow morning and they. Dr. Jones, I love that you took the feedback as an opportunity and really did something that like made a meaningful, not just like check the box on, we got to it's clearly such a great idea. Well, it worked.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's really cool. Very cool. All right. Thank you. All right. At this point, we will move along to District Advisory Committee reports. The first one we have is the Communications Committee, which Lauren is providing an update on.
We met a few weeks ago and really we just talked about like the
Yeah.
position, the communications position and kind of drilled down on the job description for that. I don't know if you have any further updates on that or it was a big discussion.
But I do think it was a
there.
good conversation and we further, to Lauren's point, further drilled down on like what exactly are the needs and where do they fall into one position and is it a position or is it so I am very pleased to share with you that I saw my first Instagram post from our superintendent's Instagram account today, which I think will be great because we have been hearing like in intercouncil and meetings that some of these other committee meetings, we hear people comment on all the great work that's being done and ask how we can, share that out more so with parents in the community. So hopefully that will start speaking more to some of the work that's being done by the administration and our staff. So I'm excited about that. I shared your.
It's at Chagrin _SUPT, right? So everyone go follow. Right. So,
Okay.
We also got some feedback at senior council about the bulletin section of the Chagrin Valley
the
Times.
newspaper, yeah.
So that's, for some reason, it had sort of fallen off. It had gone through, we had some personnel changes and we didn't realize that it wasn't making it to the paper. So someone at senior council pointed out that they love to look at that section and get the update. So I think starting probably next week, it'll be in there. So you can look for that.
I'm going to see how many people are watching online because right now there are 20 followers. I'm going to check at the end of the meeting and see how many. Because when I followed I don't know, maybe half an hour ago, there were only 17. So I don't know.
Nice.
Creeping up there pretty quick.
It could be a contest, right?
All right, that's it for Communications Committee Policy. Lori?
So thank you. Everybody this week in particular, and central office too. I mean, Jennifer did a ton this week to get these, or past 3 weeks to get these final policies or almost the rest of the policies done. But we also, when you look through them, you will see that there was a lot of detail that needed to come from different administrators. So this was the month when everybody really stepped it up and finished up a lot of policies that touched a lot of different aspects of what happens in that office. So we are very close. We will have our second read in a couple of tranches. Well, they will be at the next meeting, but they'll be divided into 2 groups. Depending on when we need them to take effect. And it's sort of working through some things with the handbooks, because we don't want to be pulling policies that affect the handbooks mid-year and have the policies not match what people signed on to in August. So we're working through some dates of, when things will become active, but we're really close. So thank you.
Finance Committee, Ashley?
We met with the Finance Committee on November 9th. We went through the draft 5-year forecast, made some comparisons and talked about some of the changes that have occurred since May's forecast. They gave me some good feedback on some certain points to communicate out that sometimes I don't necessarily know what, the average taxpayer and average community member wants to know, because I think it's all very important. So that was great feedback. I've incorporated it into the forecast presentation that you'll see tonight.
Great, thank you. Inner council met today, and we took a tour of the Den, which is the new Spirit Wear store. I did a little shopping. I highly recommend you do some holiday shopping if you're interested. You can actually, there's an app, you can use the Toast app and you can buy things online. You can also go visit during 4th and 6th periods, but it was super cool. And
Check out the Instagram post. You'll see what
that's
frozen.
right. I am modeling one. Yeah, that was fun. And it was great for all of the organizations, many of whom supported the creation of the Den, to be able to see it come to life. So it's exciting. We also then went back and shared updates. And I think I keep sort of expressing the same thing month after month in these meetings, but these committees have really grown into the purposes for which we created them more so each month. Today, the organizations really started talking among themselves about how they could better support each other and where redundancies lie and what is the best approach to, taking action as groups and where do synergies exist. For instance, Tiger Prep was saying that, they tend to have the smallest membership pool of all the support organizations, and they're moving into the time of year when they want to do some fundraising to support students that might want to go to prom, but that they have, a smaller base, and that they could partner with PTO, who also houses after prom, and maybe, have some aspect of after prom also be support, that provide financial support for the students. And so really great conversations that are, starting to happen authentically. And Dr. Benzarski did a great job listening and then bringing it back around and saying, okay, so I hear ideas about taking action, and I hear ideas about really fine tuning more the purpose and the direction that you would like to see this go. So that's now on the agenda for one of the upcoming meetings. Other sharing out that happened from boosters, the turkey trot's coming up. That is the day, Thanksgiving morning at 9 a.m. You can sign up online. They also have adopted the model that PTO uses to do smaller mini grants throughout the year. So anything under $500. For instance, they just bought a new popcorn machine for the concessions for basketball. And many of the sport organizations that are doing scholarships or do scholarships are in the beginning part of that process. There was a goal, I think, of Brian to get the scholarship application out prior to Thanksgiving so students could work on it over a break. And I'm not sure whether or not that's going to happen, but if it's not prior to Thanksgiving, it'll be shortly thereafter. The Ed Foundation is still celebrating the anatomy table. They're talking about doing an event in January or February to share it with a wider audience and potentially turn it into some fundraising opportunity. Their student board has launched gift cards for Dairy Island. This is new for the district. And they are trying to get the word out that it's a great stocking stuffer if that's what you celebrate. And that is also available on their website page. PTO is working on a speaker series with Jen Banco that we'll get more information on in the new year, and support for conferences, which are coming up at Gurney and the Intermediate School. They mentioned that they were doing the guest bartender fundraiser, but I thought they said earlier in the year that they weren't doing that. So they're checking on that. I was asking them to check on that. And Safe Routes, they are revamping their bylaws. They're changing the scholarship timeline to align with the other support organizations, and they are doing a 50-50 raffle.
That's music lovers, right?
That's music lovers?
Yeah, Safe Routes didn't have anything, but all that's music lovers.
Okay. I was confused
You're
about
like,
that.
"What?" I know.
Community Ed has a new upcycle class, which sounded really interesting. It's for middle school and high school students, and there are some fashion experts that are coming in and helping them repurpose materials to do some design work. And there is a new registration system coming in December. Dad's Club has completed the playground for preschool, and they are working on building shelves in the preschool shed to make a more useful bin system for the preschool. That was actually great to hear. I think it's $1,000 of the district budget, but Dad's Club has designed it and is building it out, which they just love the partnership of that. And they are having conversations around rebuilding and rebranding and bringing back the picnic next year. Tiger Prep had their first event of the year. It was a fireside chat, which went really well. And they have another meeting coming up in December where they will be discussing with parents how to prepare for and participate in IEP and 504 conversations in a way that is partner-oriented and productive with the district. And I don't know if I'm allowed to unveil this yet.
Don't unveil, but what we will say is probably on that Instagram page at some point that we had a full discussion about a rebrand for the name, because we've been struggling with the name Intercouncil, and it's been around, and we had this whole discussion if it was Intercouncil before it became Intercouncil, and we've been piloting all kinds of different names. I think we've settled on the name. We're working on the logo right now. So expect a total rebrand. And I think the Instagram page would be the place to announce that new name and logo. And I'm super proud of the group and what we've accomplished in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
They're a pretty amazing group, and I'm super excited now for them to take on action. So they're working now on planning projects that they're going to come together as one organization and plan together for our school. So super excited to see what that looks like.
We also had a senior breakfast, and you have to decide whether or not that's going to
Well,
be.
they're writing their names too. They've been submitting.
But I don't know if that's going to be an advisory committee or just, yeah.
On it.
Okay.
They have to own it.
Yeah.
Like,
to get there.
The other advisory councils have. So
But
we'll see what they do.
We had a great turnout, and we had the students performed from a few scenes from Once Upon a Mattress, which was fun to see. And then Molly gave a presentation on AI, which was really eye-opening for everyone in the room, and talked about how the district is proactively educating our students on how to take advantage of AI and what it means as a tool and what you should and shouldn't use it for. That was fantastic.
And we talked about, Mike, is Mike here? Yes, so get ready. They loved your AI presentation because he stepped back and said, okay, so look, give me some things. Let's ask it some questions. Let's see how we can use it. And I think after you left, it was decided that it would be great to do this again and to set people up with Chromebooks if they didn't have laptops, or to have them bring their own laptops and to have them come in and actually do a little training and work with them so they can see how we use it and they can see how they might want to use it in their own lives.
I think you're going to be starting a senior council computer lab. I see where this is going.
Jared will work on the name.
Right, because I might need to come to that and I'm not ready to be on senior council.
See what we define.
Teach a class offering through community ed.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Jared could take care of that too.
And then athletic committee met today and we reviewed the bylaws. Athletic committee was the first advisory committee that we created. So it was a good time to review the bylaws because it's been functioning now for 2 full years. And when we did the bylaws the first time, we were still defining what we wanted in an advisory committee. So there was a lot of information in it that we were able to remove now at this point. And Jennifer got good feedback on just the bylaws itself so that we can standardize them across all of the advisory committees, which is something she's working on wrapping up in the next little while.
Right, and the good news is then for all of these committees that we report out on, they'll all have a house on the website. So they'll all have a home, so that if you want to go to any of these committees, you'll be able to pull up their bylaws, see how the memberships are chosen. They'll all have the same frameworks. Hopefully be able to see who the members are in case you need to reach out or contact. And we are going to more clearly define that these are superintendent advisory committees versus board committees, because both types do exist. So we're working to delineate those committees so that it's more clear on how those committees work and function. So that's why we're going back through all of the bylaws of these district advisory committees and just making sure that everything is clear when we post them on the website of their purpose and goals.
And you can pass on this because I'm putting you on the spot, but we did have a DLT meeting that I wasn't able to attend, which Lauren went to. Is there anything you want to update us on that?
We talked about sort of different options for fulfilling various SEL requirements that are being handed down from the state. There were 4 different options that we looked at. One of them was the 7 habits of what is it? 7 mindsets. Another one was the sources of strength. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Program. And then the third one was the Never Enough book, which addresses kind of high achieving kids and the stresses and mental health challenges of that. And then the fourth one was sort of a free for all, like if you have your own sort of suggestion to fulfill one of these requirements, feel free to bring that up too. So we had some time to delve into each of these and we each walked away making a commitment to research further one of them and sort of bring back our suggestions for which ones to use.
Great. So was that the PBI? Were you on was that the whole group or one of the?
That was, I think, the whole group, but it was maybe a smaller part of, it wasn't all of the group as far as I know. It was my first one, so I don't know how
Okay.
it's supposed to do it during the PD day.
Okay, that's it. Anything else under advisory reports? All right, at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Jennifer for the superintendent's report.
We have already reviewed these, but I just wanted to draw attention and put them back on the front so that we could at least look at them one more time. And that was just that the school safety officer that we had been working on and drafting with both the Chagrin Village and South Russell, those were both approved this week on, I think it was on Monday. So those now are up for us to approve tonight. And it's all the same structure that we had been talking about. The only thing that I just want to make sure that we understand is that we're only paying for the days that the officers are in our schools, their student days, and also the professional development that they would need. The Chagrin intermediate school position will only be hired for those days. That's what that position is. South Russell is looking to hire an employee then to work kind of like what Mike Baldwin works, the resource officer, additional days, but South Russell then would be responsible for any days of the contract that aren't student days. So they look a little different if you read them, but that was what the difference was. But we've discussed this, I know, at least in depth since probably May. But everything is finalized, all the changes were made that were requested, and we are super excited to get these jobs posted. Both chiefs anticipate to have someone in place in January when school starts.
I was out with my sister last weekend and we ran into a off-duty South Russell police officer who was working in a store and she started talking to him about being from Chagrin, and he was all excited about, oh, we're going to have an SSO and it's different from an SRO, and here's what we do, and here's what we do. And she kept looking at me and I'm like, but it was cool to see him very excited about it as well. And also to see his support, unsolicited support for the value of the position and having specifically the, a person that's building relationships with people on the campus. Okay, I did not, those are under recommendations, so we're not approving them right now, right?
I'm just making sure that they're both there, but I do not think that we'll approve them under the superintendent's credit. I just want to make sure that they both made them because they came in late on Monday. But yes, I'd like to approve them under when we do the superintendent recommendation part.
I'm just gonna look on 806 and no, that's not it.
I just don't, I'm trying to find.
Because we can approve them right now too, if you want.
What do you think, Ashley? I don't know that they made the actual, because they came in late.
If they were not on the agenda, I would feel more comfortable giving the community more time.
Well, they're on the agenda under the report. Like the action.
Yeah, but there was no action item on there when we released the agenda.
So we could still do it in December, right?
Of course. Is that okay with you?
Early.
No, because Chagrin
They were
is
supposed to be
moving
on the
forward.
agenda for
Yeah.
tonight. That's why they were on Monday before it was released. If they just didn't make the right slot.
So they were supposed to be on for action.
Yeah.
I didn't. So they weren't.
I didn't see it until just now either. Well, I can make a motion to add the 3.01 and 3.02 from the superintendent's report to superintendent's recommendations. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I motioned and Robert second. Can you take the roll, please?
Sorry. Mrs. Bros,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
So just to be clear, these were on the agenda before they were posted.
Yes,
They
still
just were
are.
not posted in the
Right.
correct section.
right, she should have, the actual attachments should have just been under superintendent's recommendations. Right. I feel like we've had a long runway with this as well, so I'm not concerned about it. All right, at this point, we will, once Ashley done scribbling, turn it over to Ashley for the treasurer's report.
Okay. So I emailed, I know you guys don't have a really great view, but I did email you the slides if you wanted to follow along. And I know you've seen the actual report, so this is the presentation of the report. First thing I always like to start out with is it's important to remember that the 5-year forecast is an estimate. It's only as good as the information that we have right this minute. As we have all seen in Ohio, circumstances around school finance change constantly. And if something that I have assumed in this forecast changes, it will clearly change the estimated items and it'll change the forecast. If something changes significantly, we can amend the forecast and resubmit it at any time. We're required to submit it in November, and we're required to submit an update to it in May. But at any time in between there, if we choose to, we can resubmit if something were significantly different and we really wanted everybody to see how it changes the forecast. We can always do that. I've actually never had to do it. I better knock on wood because now I'm going to. But it is possible. One thing in here to keep in mind is every item in here, every line takes into account things that are not necessarily true yet. So I have to assume a lot of things. So when you look at that actual forecast, it's really important to look at the report that goes with it, that explains what it is that we're assuming in some of these line items. Doesn't it explain every single little detail that went into that line? Certainly I have all of that information if anybody's interested. Love going through my spreadsheets. So if anybody wants to see them, great. But it is really important to make sure that you're taking both of those documents together. The way it gets submitted now, and as you've seen in the report, that's actually what you'll act on later in the meeting is they have put the actual forecast with the numbers at the end of the report, which I love that they started, districts have started doing that. We all kind of a lot of us use the same software. Because that kind of forces people to see the report ahead of it. It used to be submitted completely separate. To the state, you would submit the forecast, and then there was like a completely different process to submit the assumptions, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense because they are so important. So I think I hammered that enough. Read the assumptions. Okay, so moving on to the first slide that has actual numbers in it. This is the forecast summary. I try to keep this consistent. Should look very familiar. It looks exactly the same as I've presented for the last several years. Just lop off the oldest date. I add the newest date on here and you can kind of track and see changes. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly what we submitted in May. Things have changed since then. But if you are following along, you'll notice that when we start deficit spending is pretty similar. And the way that affects the forecast is the same. So we are going to start deficit spending, it looks like, in FY25. So right now we are in FY24. I know it is 2023. School year 2023-2024 is fiscal year, or when I say FY, that's what I mean, fiscal year 24. Next school year, by the end of next school year, we should be deficit spending, assuming all of the things that I've assumed in this forecast. And then as you move along, once you do start deficit spending, because expenditures increase because that's the way our economy is set up. Once you start deficit spending and our revenue stays pretty flat, the expenditures are moving up, your deficit spend gets larger every single year. So you'll see we move from a $600,000 deficit in 25 to an almost $3 million deficit in 28.
And this is important because school districts cannot operate at a loss. So if we ever got to a point where we were at zero with no.
Right. So when I'm talking spend deficit, not cash deficit.
Right.
So I should probably be very clear about that. The bottom line there is the cash. So we will be operating at a loss, but we would not be operating in the red as far as cash. We have to have cash in the bank. We can't just keep spending and make up money and keep my opinions to myself. So starting with the revenue, I'm going to go down through every single line on the forecast. If you've got the report or if you have the little summary which is just the numbers. I've got all of that available. I have a document that actually compares it to last year too, if you're interested. But if you're moving down, we're going to start at the top, go through every revenue line item. I'm not going to go through everyone in detail. When I start on the first one, I'm going to take some time. Don't panic. I'm not going to spend that much time on every line, I promise. What I have put together here is all of these graphs. If it starts in gray, goes into orange, gray is going to be your actual numbers, and that's in the past, can't change it. Orange is what we're projecting. So this is a quick picture of our revenue. You can see in 19, revenue went down. It has gone up a little bit. 24, it is going to go up. Some of that is a little bit artificially inflated. In this fiscal year, fiscal 24, part of the reason that you see this bar right here going up, or column, is in 23, if you remember at the end of the year, we made some advances out to federal grants. We had some ESSER funds that we spent, some pretty large dollars. Those federal funds were in the negative. We had to advance to cover those deficits out of our general fund. So then this year, we advanced that back. So that's a revenue to the general fund. It's not really revenue. It's not new money coming in. So it's kind of misleading, but it makes this revenue here in 24 look a little bit artificially inflated. If you're interested, the dollar amount that we advanced out last year is $1.7 million. So if you're looking at these numbers, that it would, flatten this out a little bit more and make it look more like a steady increase. Okay, so I like to present this slide periodically. Usually I have something like this on the website. It shows where our money is coming from. And I like to show last year's actual to the farthest out that we're projecting, because things tend to change. If you just look at just the pie, it doesn't look like things are changing a whole lot. I also like to point out this giant orange slice of the pie here is our real estate taxes. We are extremely reliant on our real estate taxes. The way school finance is set up in Ohio, it's just the way it is. For us, last year, 78% of our revenue came from real estate taxes. So this orange piece is class 1 and 2. Then if you go down here and look at this little, looks gray on here, but it was purple in my office. Public utility, that's also coming from our taxes. And then the state funding piece of the pie here is only 6.25%. So a lot of times people think schools in Ohio are funded by the state. State likes to say that they fund schools. Only 6% of our revenue is coming from the state. So I like to make sure people understand that. All right, starting with line 1.01, property tax revenue. So the way I've got all of these slides set up is here on the left-hand side is, again, comparing last year's actual to the furthest year out. This is the percentage of our revenue. So this is this is 78% of our revenue. This is most of our revenue. As we go through and you start to see these bars be teeny tiny little slivers, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them. Property tax revenue is calculated by our effective rate, and I'll explain what that means in a second. Our valuation and our collection rate. So we don't necessarily collect every dollar that is assessed. Sometimes people don't pay their tax bills. Sometimes they pay more than their tax bill because they're paying last year's. So our collection rate can vary. We're pretty lucky in Chagrin. Our collection rates are pretty stable. We don't have a ton of delinquencies, but occasionally if you do see a collection year where the collection rate is more than 100, it's because, how is that possible? It's because people are paying delinquencies. So, all right. So starting with the effective rate. So I want to explain what this means. We assess our property taxes. We vote levies in. Everybody knows that. I talk about that that stair step effect all the time as our expenditures gradually increase at a pretty steady rate just because of the way inflation works. Our revenue does not go with it. And that is because of House Bill 920. So House Bill 920 reduces the amount of millage on voted levies. So that part's going to be important. voted levies. So as your property values increase, your voted millage gets adjusted down so that when we collect on that levy, the district, the school collects the same amount of money that was generated by that levy when it was passed. So I like to put this example here. Imagine a district passed a levy in 1993. I was in high school. And that levy was going to make $100. Today, that levy's still on our books. If it's a continuing levy, it's still on our books. That levy still only gives us $100. Clearly, that $100 does not go as far as it did in 1993. But that's what House Bill 920 does. So this first graph here is just general fund class 1. So that's all of our residential property. This shows the voted millage versus the effective millage. So to kind of give you a picture of what this actually does to our millage from 18 through 22. So that's the last tax year that I have information. 23, I don't have the information yet. This is tax year 22, which is collected in 23. So the orange on this graph is the effective mills. The gray is essentially lost millage. So as you can see here, our full voted and our what's lost is actually more than what we're even collecting now. So we're collecting less than 50% of the millage that our voters have approved over the years. But because House Bill 920 adjusts that millage down, we're still collecting the same dollar amount on every levy when it passed, and every levy on our tax budget. When we pass the tax budget in January, you'll see every levy is listed and the year it was passed and the voted millage. The county then goes in, takes what the new valuation is and says, okay, in order for the school to collect the amount of money that this was approved for, we have to adjust millage down. So that automatically happens.
Actually, that's
yes.
You should use that slide. That's the best description of that process, the effective millage rate that I've ever seen given. And when we do a levy, you should share that with the community. I can't see. Can you tell me what the voted and the effective actual numbers are?
So for 22, the effective millage rate, this is general fund only, and this is also residential. So this does not apply to commercial because their rates, they're effective. It's different. But residential is what most people are the most interested in. Our effective millage was 48.93.
Okay.
And then lost mills on top of that was 69.37.
So
100 and can't do that in my head. I have a 10 key in my hand.
It's good to
at all
have that
times.
information top of hand, because when we do pass levies, people think like, 6.9, 7.9. My gosh, if you've been doing that
Right. So to further illustrate that, the last 3 levies I tried to pull out here just to kind of, these are probably the ones people remember passing and they remember talking about. The levy that was passed in 2012 for 7.9 mils is now collecting only 6.5. 2017, the voters approved 5.5 mils for operating. It's now collecting 4.72. And then 2020, which seems like yesterday, the voters approved 3.85 mils. That is already down to only 3.49. So that's just with our normal changes in valuation. So going to talk about valuation in a second, but there are changes in valuation all the time, affected by many things, not just reevaluation, reappraisal. However,
Ashley, can you pause for one?
Yes,
I just want to underscore. So I think correct me if you interpret it differently, but when House Bill 920 passed, inflation was very strong.
yes.
And the intent was to prevent unvoted tax increases.
Right.
So every tax increase is voted on, and residents know exactly the dollar amount that they are going to be contributing, whether it be to a municipality or to a school.
Right.
And then that's why we have to keep going back.
Mhm.
So that stays flat. We go back again because of inflation to say,
Right.
We can't survive on the 1992 revenues that
Right.
you voted on.
Right.
And that's why we ask for a little bit more millage each time.
Right. And that's why every time I talk about property value or property tax revenue, I always say, remember, this does not go up with your property values. That's the voted millage. So now I'm going to talk about the inside millage. So the inside millage, House Bill 920 does not affect that. It does not apply to that. So to the taxpayer, that's 10 mills, which is 1% of their assessed value. So their assessed value is 35% of your home value. So I have a couple of real world examples here of what is kind of been happening. But very quickly, if you have $100,000 home, you're not taxed on the full $100,000. You're only taxed on 35% of that. So they take the 35% and they say, okay, this is your assessed value. This is what we're going to tax you on. And then they apply the millage to it. So the 10 mills that every taxpayer pays, that's called inside millage. So that's, you don't vote on, it's not additional levies, and House Bill 920 doesn't apply to it. That 10 mills is split between the taxing authorities. So we, as Chagrin schools, we get 4.5 mills on those 10. So we get 45% of the inside millage. County gets a portion depending on what township you live in or village you live in, they get a portion. It's shared. So the schools get 45% of it. So we get, it's so confusing because your tax bills don't necessarily, give you all this. All you care about is what are you paying? But we get 45% of the 10 mills that's assessed on the 35% of your property value. So I know that this is confusing. This is why when you see my forecast, you do see increases in property value or property tax revenue all the time. We're always forecasting some sort of increase. And it gets confusing because then I turn around and say, but remember, your taxes don't go up with your values, because for the most part, they don't. It's only on the inside millage. The 4.5 mills for us at Chagrin is split. 3 mills goes into our general fund and 1.5 mills goes into our permanent improvement fund. So when you're looking at the forecast, it's the general fund only. So we're talking 3 mills. So the increase is not huge, but it's there. And we do know that it's coming. We forecast for it. We know when the appraisals are. We know when the reevaluations are, and we do predict some sort of increase. We do count on that increase. Geauga County was assessed this year, or they did their reappraisal this year. Cuyahoga will be doing theirs next year. In between there, so they do this every 6 years. In between there, on the 3rd year, they also do an update. So that's to try to kind of stop the effect of, waiting a full 6 years, because clearly your property value is going up every single year. So if you wait 6 full years to look at it, then it's going to kind of jump up. So they try to mitigate that a little bit by doing the triennial update. Full reappraisal for Geauga's this year, Cuyahoga's next year. Again, we know when those are happening. Those are always baked into the forecast. This year, however, Geauga's was higher than what I had predicted. So there is some increase in our forecast that you would not have seen in May. Certainly I'm aware of what's happening. We know what's happening in the economy. So we do predict increases, but some of the increases that I'm hearing about in the valuation were certainly higher than we predicted. So I've got a couple real world examples here. These are 2 properties that I pulled. Anybody who wants to go out to Geauga County's website and look at this, or Cuyahoga County for that matter, if you're looking at your valuation there, I can help anybody find all of this information. These are 2 examples I pulled just to kind of illustrate what is actually happening, because I think there's a real miscommunication out there that people just don't understand. So they see something and they hear, oh my goodness, my property value is going up by 40%. That means my taxes are going to go up by 40%. It's not true. because like I said, taxes only go up on the inside millage. So in this first example here, and this is a real home property in Geauga County. For tax year 22, the value was $331,000. Tax year 23 right now, Cuyahoga is estimating, and there's kind of a star on here, nothing's final yet. Or did I say Cuyahoga? Geauga. On their website, there's a little asterisk. Nothing's final, but for tax year 23, the value is $468,800. So that's a variance of $137,000. Seems very large. However, we're only assessed, again, we only pay taxes on 35% of that. So that assessed portion is approximately $48,000. So to that taxpayer, they're going to see on that increase in valuation, an increase in their taxes if all 10 mills are assessed and everything else is the same. So I can sit here and give you exact numbers and cents, but there are a lot of other variables in there. So one person's taxes or valuation can go up 45%. One person's can only go up 30. Maybe somebody's decreased because something happened. So all of that gets baked into the number. So it's not exact. But if all other variables were constant, this taxpayer would see an increase in their taxes of $479.85. Chagrin School's portion of that would be $216. So clearly that's not a 40% increase on their taxes. It is an increase. We acknowledge that. We know it. It happens. So what I like to, point out on this slide here is this bold right down at the bottom is that this taxpayer had a 41.3% increase on their valuation, and it's going to result to them or could result in a 6.6 increase in their taxes. It's not 41. Another example, just a much larger value. This taxpayer in example number 2, tax year 22, their valuation was $786,800. In 23, they're looking at 1.1 million. The variance is $321,000. 35% of that is $112,000. That's what their assessed taxes on. So their taxes could go up $1,100. Chagrin's portion of that is 45% of that 10 mills, because remember, we get 4.5 mills. Chagrin's portion is $505. Again, 505 would not go into the general fund because only 3 of those mills go into the general fund. So I know this gets very convoluted, and I do my best to really explain. I find that sitting down one-on-one and kind of pulling these numbers for somebody and explaining is what works best. So, if you have questions from anybody, send them my way. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. So in this example, the second example, this increase on their property value is almost 41%. They're going to see a little less than 6% increase in their taxes. Some of this $505 or the 3 mills, that this 505 is the 4.5, but some of the 3 mills I have baked into our forecast. So that's not all new money. It's not a huge windfall that we did not expect. Some of this we did expect. It is an increase from what we expected. I'm not saying that it's not more money than what we thought we would have. But it's not all unexpected. Does that make sense? Okay. Talked a lot longer on that slide than I planned. I'm sorry.
Good slide, though. I feel like I understand that better than I did before. So thank you.
So the letter that goes out, because you're in Geauga County,
Yes.
the letter that goes out says your reappraised value or reassessed value is this, and do they give the percent increase? But they don't really talk about how that impacts your taxes. You have to go do that work yourself by going to their website and plugging in your home address, and then you can figure out what it actually means in dollars and cents. Okay.
Yeah. And, again, I can help people through that if anybody, needs help finding it on Geauga's website. It's actually pretty easy if you just Google Geauga County property taxes, or it's called Real Link. So if you Google Geauga County Real Link, can't recall what Cuyahoga's is called. But yeah, and the reason they can't give you an exact dollar amount is because of all those other variables,
right.
So I'm talking
and people don't always know that, like, if somebody contests their appraised
Right.
value, like the schools still collect the same dollar amount. So one person might be paying less.
Right.
But it forces the other.
Right. So all other things being equal, if your taxes go down, that means everybody else's taxes go up. So if
For the
everybody's, what's that?
Voted
For the
millage.
voted millage.
Right.
If everybody else's taxes, if everyone's taxes went up the exact same percentage. So clearly I just have two examples here. Not everybody is the exact same percentage, but if they just said everybody in Geauga County and Cuyahoga County went up 30%, nobody would see an increase on the voted millage at all. Now, some people will see an increase on that portion. Some people will see a decrease on that portion.
Actually, also, it's collected twice a year, right? So it would start next year, the change in the tax bill, and it would still be split. So that whatever those $500 are,
Mhm.
it would be 250 in the
Yeah.
first half of the year and then 250. And so people can plan for this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, these are annual numbers. I probably should have said that from the start. These are annual numbers. This is the whole year.
Presumably Cuyahoga will have a similar
Mhm.
increase next year.
Mhm.
And so have you built that? Have you bumped that up?
I
too?
did.
Okay.
I did. And that's all in these forecasted numbers. Again, it's the best I can do. It's
Yeah,
the
no, I
best I
know.
can estimate.
and still conservatively. I mean, we want
yeah.
you to be conservative. in
Yeah.
those
And this did happen actually 3 years ago or 2 years ago with the triennial update for Cuyahoga, because Cuyahoga went up a pretty large percentage in that triennial update
Yes.
for a lot of people. So yeah, it happens periodically. Okay, so one other thing I like to point out for our property tax revenue is when we're talking about our tax base, think back to that pie chart that I showed you a few slides ago. 80% of our revenue is coming from our real estate. The other complication for Chagrin is that we don't have a lot of commercial properties. So when I'm talking class 1 and class 2, so this graph that I showed you, which is the lost millage versus the effective millage, that was only for class 1. So that's our residential. To us, that is 92% of our tax base. That's very high. We don't have the commercial, we don't have the shopping centers and the big box stores and the rest. Well, we have some pretty darn good restaurants, but we don't have the number of restaurants that a lot of these other schools have. We don't have the commercial tax base that a Solon has or that an Orange has. So this, I don't love that this does not match. This is just a snipped image. I couldn't pull it down. I could have recreated everything going back 20 years. It would have taken me significant time. And I didn't think that was very wise use of my time. So I snipped the image. But this shows our valuation for Chagrin schools going back 20 years. So you can see, it increases. The blue is our residential. So we rely heavier on taxes in general, and we rely heavier on our real estate or on our class 1, which is our residential. This little pie chart over here to the right is tax year 22. It's our most recent year. And it's just showing the breakdown of our tax base. I have lots of data on this if anybody's really interested. It's riveting. Okay, so property tax revenue. Any questions on that?
it's an important piece.
That is it's
was
extremely
worth
important to
spending
us.
some time on
It's
it, so thank you.
80% of our revenue. I promise it will be close to 80% of my presentation. Okay, moving on to line 1.02. So hold on, let me make sure I covered my points. I did. Okay. Line 1.02 is the public utility personal property tax. So this is also taxes also collected through the county. On the public utility personal property, it's the full voted. So House Bill 920 does not apply to this. So this goes up pretty significantly. You can see in 24. The reason for that is you can see this dip here in 23. A couple utility companies paid their taxes late. And so rather than doing new settlements and distributing that money to us, it was $400,000. To the entire county, it was a lot more. To us, it was $400,000 that they chose not to distribute to us and just said, we'll give it to you in the fall. So, because our spring settlements were already done. So rather than just create new settlements, they chose to keep it, give it to us in the fall. We have received it in our fall settlements. And so that's why this 24 is artificially inflated. If you took the extra off of here, lopped it off of this 24, threw it on 23, you'd see a pretty steady incline.
Get interest with that payment?
We do not. Okay, moving on to line 1.035. This is the unrestricted grants and aid is what this is called. To you, that's state foundation funding. You can see, if you remember, back in 20, they cut our revenue pretty significantly. It has increased steadily. The Fair School Funding Plan has resulted for us in some slight increases, which is fantastic. We are closer now to being on the formula. We are still on the guarantee, but not as heavy into it. We're not as far onto the guarantee. We're still on it. So what that means is we're just guaranteed that we'll receive the same amount as whatever it is that they chose to put in, sorry, I didn't bring a water. Talking a lot. We're guaranteed an amount from a previous year. So that guarantee has changed over the years. It's gone, up and down. If they remove that, there is talk in Columbus, about going fully formula. It's not quite as scary to us as it used to be. The formula is working for us pretty well. For other districts that are very high on that guarantee, it's going to make a very, very large difference. To us, it will be a loss if they eliminate it. I don't want to mince words there. It will be a loss to us, but it's not going to devastate these.
And again, this is the 6.8%
Yes.
of our revenues.
Yeah, that's
This
what
is
I was going to
5.4.
call out. But Ashley, for anyone who's watching at home,
Mhm.
the chart on the right, the scale of it is actually what you're talking about. You have on the left, just to show that this is not
Right.
It
So-
can start to look like it's all a lot of money, but the denominator here is
Yeah.
much smaller.
Yeah, this is this portion was 5.4% of our revenue for last year. So not huge. I'm not gonna, talk about it like I did property taxes. I'm not gonna go in and explain every single line in the formula. What I have assumed here, though, it is important to note that the Fair School Funding Plan is approved in the current state budget. It's phased in at 50% this year. Beyond the rest of beyond this current biennium, we don't know. So I have assumed that they're going to complete the phase in, which would mean 66.67% next year, 83.33% in 26, and then 100% for 27 and 28. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I hope it does, but if it doesn't, then, that would mean some change in our forecast to us. The other thing I want to point out is the way the Fair School Funding Plan works now is they calculate a base cost for us, then their share. So they're calculating the share, or they're giving us the share that they're giving us on our base cost is $808 per pupil. So clearly it costs us a lot more than that to educate our children. And that's why this is only 5.4% of our revenue, because it's not adequate. It's not enough. Any questions on state funding? So on the pie chart earlier, I put state funding all as one piece of the pie, but it encompasses this line and this line, which is the restricted money. So this is also state money. It's also coming through the foundation, but it's the things that are for the categoricals, the things that are specified as to what we have to spend it on. It includes catastrophic aid, wellness funds, career tech, economic disadvantaged, and then all the categoricals like the transportation and that type of thing. So the increase that you see in 22, so you see a pretty large jump there in 22, that was due to the catastrophic aid And what that means is we have students who require significant funding, more than a typical student. I don't like that word, but we have an opportunity at the end of the year. Every district will record or report to the state how much we spent on individual students that cost significant dollars, and they call it catastrophic. They will then take the total amount and say, okay, this is how much we have for catastrophic funding. They'll take that and say, if we received application for $1 million, we only have $500,000. Now, those are very low numbers. It's a lot higher than that. But let's say the entire state submitted $1 million and we only have $500,000 to give to everybody in the state. Then that means everybody gets 50% of the amount of their request. So, and that changes from year to year. So sometimes we'll get 24% of what we request. Sometimes we'll get 30% of what we request. In 22, that was a pretty big jump.
So that sounds like the way they used to do funding for all students, right? So they back into the number instead of figuring out what it costs to educate a student who they put in the catastrophic category. They say, this is how much money we have, and then we'll divide it up and we'll say that that's how much it costs to educate a student who's in the catastrophic category.
Which we have determined, as you were in a session with me this week, is part of what they have determined was not constitutional.
Right.
But that's how they do it. So I have assumed, being the pessimist that I am, that is going to gradually decline because there are so many other things that they're promising funding for now, that pot of money that's getting paid out for catastrophic, my guess is that's probably going to keep getting smaller. Could be wrong. Okay. Next line is now called state share of local property
Actually, can we
taxes.
go back to, given what we've seen in the preschool enrollment, did you accommodate for the fact that so the pot may be changing, but our local needs may be changing as well?
So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about our local needs when I talk expenditures.
Okay.
But I don't believe we can get catastrophic for preschool. I think it's K-12 only.
I just meant
have
that
to look.
students will stay in the district.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, we only get a percentage of what we request. Okay. So this line is now called state share of local property taxes. It used to be known as property tax allocation. They actually put it in law that we are required to label it this. They really want credit for giving us that. It's the state share. So this is 8.5% of our revenue last year. It represents the homestead and rollback reimbursements. So when people see those deductions on their taxes, the state then picks that up and sends us the amount that was rolled back for the homestead rollbacks. Okay. Line 1.06 is other operating. So this is just kind of the catch-all for everything else they want to throw in there. Last year was 4%. It went up significantly. If you look there and you're comparing 22 to 23, it's a really big jump. Anybody want to guess what caused it? Investment earnings. So our investment income, because rates were nothing for so long, finally, we're making some interest on the money that is in the bank. So, and I, of course, have expected that to decline slightly. I'm afraid to hold it completely level. I haven't just devastated it. I'm not expecting it to completely go away, but I don't expect it to stay where it is right now. I'm not an economist, but okay. Any questions on revenue?
Nope.
Okay, sorry. That sounded very exasperated. I'll go quicker.
Well,
okay.
I've been through this 16 times.
Yeah.
It's the last one you have to sit through. All right, expenditures. Again, gray is the past, orange is the future. These are projected and not set in stone. These are estimates. You do see increases. We expect that. We know that our expenditures increase. All of our expenditures in our homes increase because of inflation. Again, same type of chart. I like to show where our money's going as well as where it's coming. Where it's going is mostly to wages and benefits. It's what we do. We're a school. We educate kids. We can't do that without our people. So if you looked at any school district in the state, I'm guessing it would look fairly similar to this. People who, run businesses and things that don't have very large staffs might look at this and think that this is out of whack. It's not. This is what you would expect for a school.
Yeah, I think it's important to call out, because if you say inflation, that's confusing to people and they tie it to what's happening in the economy at the time. Our expenditures are always increasing because 85% of our expenditures are salaries and benefits, and our staff is getting annual increases based on their tenure and then based on cost of living adjustments.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Which are based on, CPI and
Right.
Things like that. All right. Going to do the same thing with expenditures. Line 3.01, personnel services. This is salaries and wages. You can see last year it's 54% of our expenditures. We do expect that to continue to go up. This nice flat, amount here. This was when we made the commitment when we were passing that levy in 20. We cut $1 million. We, cut a lot of things out. And that's why that went down. You would very, very, very rarely see salaries go down without either giving everybody a pay cut or riffing a lot of positions, which we did not do. We did it through attrition and things like that. We cut we cut some of our supplementals and things like that. Any questions on that? Oh, and I do have increases in here for current contracts, and then beyond those contracts, just what we have estimated, but those are not set in stone. Once those are entered into, then clearly they would be updated in the forecast if we
Yeah, that's
needed
the only
to.
thing I was going to say. It's negotiated. So these
Right.
are your probably most solid numbers,
Mhm.
at least for the next 3 to 4 years,
Right.
including the benefits package.
Right. And one thing I do want to point out, this doesn't look like a huge jump here. I know some people are going to say, well, it's larger than the, 20 from 22 to 23 was smaller than 23 to 24. Part of the reason for that is recall that we moved some positions from contracted services. So they were employed by the ESC. Now they are employed by us. So it's not necessarily an increased position. It's a moved position. So it's just kind of moved out of one line into this line. So that's kind of a little bit misleading there. It doesn't look huge, but if anybody's looking at the actual numbers and wonders. The other thing on that line is when we're talking about those increased needs that we're seeing in the preschool, the increased special education needs. We have more students who are requiring one-to-one aides. So there are some positions that we have had to add, and that's to adequately serve our students. In addition, the preschool stuff. See if there's anything else I wrote down. No, I think that was all I wanted to cover. Okay, moving on to employee benefits. This does go up every year. This is where our retirement contributions, which are required by law, workers' compensation, Medicare, unemployment, and then our health-related insurances. So that's a very large portion of it. You'll notice that the incline on here, if you're comparing it to what we had last year, is not quite as steep. I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable in the performance of our self-insurance fund. It's been doing fabulously. Somebody else can knock on wood for me. It has been doing great. We are taking only a 1% increase in January. So that's not only great for our staff, but it's really great for us too. Industry standard right now is still in the double digits. I know a neighboring school who is taking more than 10% in January. We only have one. So that's great. I have lowered, I'm not expecting only 1% every single year. But I'm not building in 8 and 9s anymore either, because I'm starting to feel like, okay, this is where we want it to be. So the average along here, I think, is like 4.57 is the average increase that I've predicted throughout the life of this forecast here. So those are significant savings. Okay, moving to purchase services. This is about 10% of our expenditures. This includes a whole lot of stuff. Tuition, things for special education items that we cannot do ourselves, excess costs, which is something that gets taken from our foundation revenue directly from the state, but I have to record the revenue and the expense. So this is the expense. It's a purchase service. Legal services, which we covered in a spotlight a couple months ago, that's gone up for all schools around the state. And not necessarily because the hourly rates are going up, but because our needs are higher, just given the climate that we're all dealing with in public schools now. Property and liability insurance, which is actually going down for this year compared to last year. It's about $50,000 less. And then all the utilities, things like that. And this says facilities management contract, which is, we don't have that anymore. That was copied over and that was my error. Travel expenditures for all of our conferences and our learning and all of those things that we do. And as with everything else, costs go up. Supplies and materials. This is where we buy stuff. These are our books, our supplies, our paper, our pens, all that type of thing. Custodial supplies. One of the big portions of this is also our bus fuel. So gas for the buses. Still only 2.3% of our expenditures last year. So, we hear a lot of tighten your belts. We do, believe me, we do. Thank you, principals. But even if we eliminated this completely and bought nothing, I could only remove 2.3% of the budget here. So our staff does a wonderful job at looking for best prices. We've eliminated some of the things that were needed for the purchasing process. So they've got time now, rather than filling out, by hand requisitions and dealing with some of those things. They can now spend that time searching for the best price. And they do. And we appreciate it very much. Okay. Line 3.05 is capital outlay. This is our equipment. Not really even going to say hardly anything about it because it's 0.7% of our budget last year. So, furniture, computers, equipment, anything that is like large items, things that are going to last that don't get consumed and used up, are considered equipment and go in this line. Other objects. This is again one of those, it's defined by the state what goes in here. Things like auditor treasurer fees. We have to pay the county for collecting our taxes for us. Audit expenses. So we have to be audited and we have to submit financial statements and submit an audit. We have to pay for that. It's not a free service. Bank fees, memberships, anything like that goes in this line. Other financing uses. This one looks a little funny again. This is transfers and advances out. That 23 is again that $1.7 million that we had to advance for those federal funds. It is back into the general fund now, but it kind of artificially inflated that line. Okay, overall, gray here is our revenue. Orange is our expenditures. You can see expenditures went down from 19 to 21. That was what we committed to doing, kind of flattened that line out. Still continues to go up without continually making more and more cuts every single year, which, we can't do without affecting the classroom and affecting programming. Expenditures go up. So at some point, these two lines cross. For us, it's looking like that's going to be next fiscal year in 25. all of the same information, just presented in a different type of graph. This is our surplus or shortfall. Again, in 25, we're going to start deficit spending. So these two numbers here between 23 and 24 look a little funky again, due to that $1.7 million. Really don't have a $2 million surplus in revenue. 1.7 of that is in advance back into the general fund, just repaying the general fund, not really revenue. I think I've said that enough tonight. Okay. This is the same summary that I like to include every single time. This is on the website. I will get this one on there tomorrow for the newly updated one. Gray is revenue, orange is expenditure. Once the expenditure starts exceeding the revenue, we start decreasing our cash. So if you're spending more than you're bringing in, your cash balance is going to go down. So the green line here is our cash balance. You can see it start going down in 25. I'm done. I took a lot more time than I thought I would. I'm sorry.
I think probably it was helpful for our new board members that are in the audience. It's always good to have that information repeated in detail. Does anyone have any? Ashley, you did a great job. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Moving along to the public participation portion of our agenda. Do we have anyone that has requested to speak?
Did you sign in?
Did you sign? Okay. I have to read this first. Sorry.
Oh.
I know it's for an audience of one, and I know you serve on South Russell boards, but the purpose of Board of Education meetings is for the board to conduct its business. Board meetings are held in public but are not public forums. The discussion of agenda items is intended to be among board members, not a discussion with the public. The public participation section of the agenda is an opportunity for citizens to address the board. Community members who contacted the superintendent in advance of the meeting may be provided an opportunity to speak first. Public comment is limited to 30 minutes. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak. No person may speak twice until all who desire to speak have had the opportunity to do so. Remember, this is a formal official meeting of the board, and what you say becomes part of the official meeting report. If your comment involves a problem with a student, employee, or board member, please do not address them by name. Keep in mind, we are meeting in a schoolhouse and possibly in the presence of students. Following your public comment, if you have specific questions, please email the superintendent at jennifer.pinzarski@chagrinschools.org.
Thank you first for the opportunity to speak. My name is John Buda. I'm the Geauga County taxpayer to the Chagrin Falls School District. And my reason for coming tonight is specifically regarding the property tax revaluation increase. And as well to the future board members. Wow, timing is everything.
Yeah.
To follow such a comprehensive report from the treasurer, and I was impressed.
Thank you.
I appreciate the amount of information and the way that you deliver it. I have no doubt and absolute confidence that it is technically correct.
Thank you.
So that being said, I, to some degree, now feel like I am standing in front of a tidal wave. I am shouting into the hurricane because I can appreciate the financial picture that is presented. At the same time, I am here to ask and implore that the board members consider within its power anything legal, of course, it can do to mitigate the overage of the property tax revaluation increase. I respect that the fiduciary accountability to build in a forecasted budget with a number that is reasonable and likely to occur. I think all taxpayers should understand that. However, the revaluation for 2024 for Geauga County is greater than the taxpayers expected. And I think it's greater than the district expected. based on having a number before the revaluation it was expecting, and now knowing it's going to likely be a greater number. So we all in this room are affected by the inflation that is occurring. And any thought of, well, it's only $500 and it's split twice a year to $250 can be perceived as dismissive, judgmental, perhaps not inclusive of, or not empathetic to the taxpayer. I appreciate and understand the complexity that this school district has of being in two counties and the timing differential between what is occurring in Geauga County and not occurring in Cuyahoga County for 2024. Regarding any comment that it is likely to occur as well next year in Cuyahoga County is an assumption that may not occur, because the backlash that has already been sounded is being received in Columbus by the state to review what they can do. So that's my 3-minute.
It is your 3 minutes.
But again, I will just ask from a moral perspective, please consider anything you can do. And I know it has to be quick this month to mitigate the overage amount. I think it will go a long way with the Geauga County taxpayers in this school district to develop goodwill for future needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this point, I move to approve board recommendation 6.01. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Any comments, questions? No. Ashley,
Wait.
please take the roll.
Who seconded that? I'm sorry.
Lauren.
Okay. Ready? Mrs. Bros.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller. Yes. Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
I move to approve consent agenda items 7.02 through 7.05. Can I have a second?
I'll second. Jinx.
Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Bros.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller. Yes. Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
I move to approve superintendent recommendations as written 8.02 plus through 8.14, also including 8.15 now, which was 3.01 earlier in the agenda, the MOU with the Chagrin Falls Village, and 8.016, which was earlier in the agenda, 3.02, the MOU with the South Russell Village. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Lori. Any questions or comments? Jennifer, do you want to walk us through any of these?
Maybe just draw out a couple of things.
Okay.
Just real quick, on 8.02, just note that that is the solar eclipse resolution that we've talked about a couple of times, and so we've done our due diligence. So on April 8th, we'll make a change to the school calendar that students will not have school that day. We'll make sure it's communicated in the building newsletters, and teachers then will have a work day of some sort, professional development. We'll make decisions closer to the date of whether or not that will be on campus or how we'll work that with them. It'll just depend on when we get closer to the date, what that will look like. So we're still creating those days. 8.03 would be all of the policies. And then many of the other items are just typical. Look at 8.06. You're going to see another MOU with CFEA. That's our teachers union. That's for the Gurney Holiday Show. Remember, we're trying to be true to our teachers so that if they're working outside of their work hours, that they're being compensated. That was something that we took on as a district and asked the union to come together with us to write an MOU, and they were very thankful and appreciative and worked with us to figure this out. We're still doing it by event because we're trying to figure out
What all the
what
ones
that
are.
looks like, because it's just complicated. So it looks much like the dance MOU, if you will.
Is that in the evening now, the Gurney Holiday Show?
Yeah,
Okay.
at the Performing Arts Center.
Okay.
So what you'll see next month would be the actual approval of the teachers who will be doing it, and there will be classified staff as well.
Okay.
So the classified staff MOU should be finalized tomorrow in EEC, and then it would be ratified, and you would be asked to vote in December. So that one should be finalized. The EEC one will be a little easier, or the OPSI one, sorry, will be a little easier because we can cover the events a little more generally on how classified staff would attend. So that MOU is just about done as well, and hopefully that will come out December 6th to be voted on. So just watching for that. The contracts are usual additional hours. This is anything new. Immediate, so everything else is different. And then just to clarify, because I did want to look some things up to make sure that there was no problem with 8.15 or 8.16.
Thank you.
I just want to draw your attention because that's just the perfectionist in me. If you read the paragraphs under each one, it does say it is recommended that the Board of Education approve. So everything is written and was done correctly as far as noticing and approving those recommendations. And by doing those tonight, we are able to execute those memorandums of understanding, and the police chiefs will be able to post those positions. So I really appreciate you allowing us to move those to the proper place to be voted on.
Do both chiefs kind of have someone in mind?
So originally one did, but that person took a different position.
Okay.
So, but both will be posted internally. So if there is an internal candidate, there's a process. And then the beauty is that we also get to sit in on the final interviews, which is nice. So I'm super excited to see how this all works out, but much more excited that this will start to work out tomorrow.
Jennifer, I had a question about when I was looking at the financial agreements between both South Russell and Chagrin Falls, I noticed that South Russell, it looks like we have a 70% responsibility of that salary. Is that accurate? I did not see what that responsibility was with Chagrin Falls Village. Do we have a rough idea, just generally speaking?
Chagrin Falls is 100% because it's only a part-time position.
Perfect.
The reason it's 70% for South Russell is because 30% will be when they're not working for us.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments? Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Bros.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Moving on to treasurer recommendations, I move to approve 9.02 and 9.03. Can I have a second?
I'll
No,
second.
Ashley, do you want to, please don't speak to the 5-year forecast?
I seriously was gonna say, okay, and start presenting.
I'm allowed to say that as the clock ticks. TikTok. Do you want to speak to 9.03?
9.03 is a recommendation for a premium holiday for our health insurance because we have done so well. The reason that it is doing so well is because of the behaviors of all of the people who were covered. So rather than just throw it into next year, we wanted to make sure that it was realized by the people who were in the plan this year. So it saves the employee that month's premium. It saves the district about $300,000. So, and that was baked into the forecast. I'm not allowed to talk about it, but that was already in there.
Yeah, I want to commend everyone, our staff. When I was working for pay back in the day, we used to talk about spending the company's money like it's your own. And I think tonight we heard 2 examples, both with the benefits packages and the way that our staff is being responsible about making sure that they're using their benefits wisely. And I know that there's a lot of training that gets provided to them and how to best do that, but also with regards to purchases and making sure that they're finding the best cost alternative when they're buying purchases for the educational experience of our students. I mean, all of that flows through to benefit everyone in the district and the community taxpayers. So it's appreciated and should be called out.
It is very appreciated. And on this, the health insurance portion, I want to reiterate that the reason isn't just because they're healthy and that's wonderful. It's because we have tools available to people to find better prices. And instead of just walking down the hall where it's most convenient, people actually are looking at these tools. And we get some reports from our consultants telling us who used the tool, who went to, we have some incentive program. We have an incentive program where if somebody goes on this tool and looks, for example, they're going to have an MRI. And if they use it and go to one of these providers instead of these providers, it will save our plan maybe thousands of dollars. It could save us, $4,000 to $5,000 just on one item. So we're providing incentives to do that. So the person who goes and looks that up, chooses that provider, it's saving the district's plan maybe thousands, and they're getting then an incentive of 75 to 100 to, depending on it, it's leveled, it's tiered, depending on what they choose and what the procedure is and how much it saves. And they're really starting to embrace it and understand that when the plan spends less money, there's more money in the pot for that plan. And then the next year's increase is lower, aka 1%. So then they save money all next year.
Mhm.
So it's working out well.
It's great.
So that's all I have. Recommending your approval.
Please take the roll.
Mrs. Bros.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Does anyone have any other business? I would like to congratulate our new board members. I know that you all just returned from a wonderful training opportunity at the Ohio School Board Association conference, and I hope that it was valuable time to get to know some of the other board members and begin talking about how you would like to participate. So congratulations. Our next meeting, my last one, will be Wednesday, December 6th at 7:00 at the high school library. And with that, I move to adjourn. I need a second.
I'll second.
Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Bros.
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Garvey.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Jennifer thinks I'm having too much fun with this whole.
The leaving thing.
Nice to formally meet you.